For my project, I decided to take a closer look at the assassinations of Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., in the hope of coming to my own conclusions about the immediate and long-term legacies of both assassinations. Not since the year 1968 has America seen such prominent social and political figures lose their lives in a year marked by such revolution. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in a motel on April 4, 1968, by James Earl Ray, an event that shocked the entire American population and brought a tragic end to the most famed and successful civil rights activists in U.S. history. Immediately following King's assassination, riots began breaking out. Violent riots broke out in cities all across the U.S., from Washington, D.C., to Chicago, to Baltimore, and dozens of other cities. In the midst of this nationwide crisis, Democratic Senator and presidential candidate Bobby Kennedy learned of the tragic news and immediately gave an impromptu speech in an inner city in Indianapolis, encouraging people to respond to the assassination with a sense of calmness instead of calamity. In my opinion, there could have been no better person to deliver the speech, evidenced by the fact that Kennedy shared a commonality among the people mourning MLK's loss. Kennedy had lost his brother just a few years earlier. Bobby Kennedy provided a relaxed, strong, and personable presence that everyone could identify with. Because of his speech, Indianapolis turned out to be one of America's major cities where a riot did not break out, a testament to Kennedy's impeccable command over a difficult situation. Once everyone learned of Martin Luther King's death, the inevitable question arose: where do we go from here? It was in this question that there was an incredible diversity of opinion among the American people. While I am sure that there were individuals with extremist opinions, most people seemed to fall into one of two categories. The first category included people who wished to continue to act upon Martin Luther King's main strategy for dealing with segregation and social construct, to not resort to violence, and to continue to promote peace among the entire population. On the other side of this were those who likely overreacted to the situation, as difficult as that is to say, and wished to meet the unfortunate violence of a single individual with the retaliation of many. This side is, however, easily understandable given the situation. A large population of the U.S. carried out MLK's idea of peaceful protest against racial segregation while he was alive. When this man was killed, the people had all of a sudden lost their leader, someone who had been guiding them for the past decade on a path to a new America. If the leader of civil rights activism could be so easily targeted in an act of violence, who was to say that his followers could not be targeted just as easily, if not even more easily? The truth in dissecting the situation is in realizing the fact that extremism should rarely be overreacted to, including in this case, because it exists among such a small minority of people and will never be completely abolished. While there are people who are against the idea of racial equality, only a small minority of them ever thought about resorting to violence to support their cause. Also, even to this very day, we still do not know the real motive behind Martin Luther King's assassination. It could have been a ploy of a larger extremist organization against racial equality, but it could have also just as easily been the self-initiated act of a single individual in his corrupted morals, or even an act of insanity. Peaceful individuals need not forgo their morals in protecting and living on the legacy of Martin Luther King, a legacy of peace and equality for the benefit of a larger community. America had little time to recover from Martin Luther King's assassination, as Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated on June 6, 1968, just over 2 months following the death of MLK. Kennedy was shot 3 times by a 24-year-old Palestinian, Sirhan Sirhan, and died in the hospital the next day. Sirhan said he did it because he felt betrayed by Kennedy's support for Israel in the Six-Day War, which had begun exactly 1 year before the assassination. Kennedy's death came at a very crucial time in the 1968 presidential election. Bobby Kennedy had just won the California primary over Eugene McCarthy, which would likely set up a one-on-one battle for the nomination against Hubert Humphrey. On the same day Kennedy came out victorious in the California primary, he had also won the South Dakota primary, which was Humphrey's home state. It is likely that if Kennedy had not been assassinated, he would have been the Democratic nominee and would have had a strong chance to win the election over Republican candidate Richard Nixon. This is because of the momentum and optimism that came along with Kennedy's wide support group, which was continually expanding in the months leading up to Election Day. Kennedy's absence in August Democratic Convention likely played a major role in the violence that broke out at the event. The absence of Kennedy, there was great division in the Democratic Party from the majority who were anti-Vietnam to those who were pro-Vietnam. The nomination of Humphrey as the Democratic candidate only disenfranchised the party even further, as Humphrey continued to be pro-Vietnam until he realized there was no way for his pro-war viewpoint to be politically popular. A dispirited Democratic Party trudged into Election Day, where the seemingly inevitable occurred. Nixon won the election and became America's 37th president. When initially looking into Bobby Kennedy's legacy, one need look no further than his brother, Senator Edward Kennedy's words about him at a church service shortly following his death. My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man, who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it. Those of us who loved him and take him to his rest today, pray that what he was to us and what he wished for others will someday come to pass for all the world. As he said many times in many parts of this nation, to those he touched and who sought to touch him, some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not? This eulogy speaks to Kennedy's humble, persevering approach towards the betterment of human life, and his openness in listening to and considering the ideas of other people and establishing his own. Kennedy established his viewpoints and made tough decisions with all of America in mind, with the ultimate goal of creating a government that would not breed dependency and instead provide a safety net while emphasizing self-reliance. It also speaks to the fact that we as human beings are created inherently equal, and fortunately, being Americans, we are entitled to our own opinions, set of morals, belief systems, and way of life. While most of us will never achieve or think to achieve national recognition in the manner that Bobby Kennedy did, I believe it is still of the utmost importance for each and every one of us to attempt to live each day with all of these things in mind, as a sense of self-importance and a nationwide consciousness geared towards improving today's America will only steer this country in a more positive direction. While we Americans enjoy these unique freedoms, we are not shy to at times utilize them by openly criticizing our country. While Kennedy was most assuredly an optimist about the future of America, he did not shy away from questioning what America stood for. He believed in a simpler nation, one that was a far cry from the prevalent ideas of consumerism and the pursuit of material wealth. While I sometimes find myself becoming easily annoyed by those who worry and complain too much about the current state of America, I am equally as conscious of the fact that these are most often people responsible enough to utilize their freedoms to empower themselves in a genuine attempt to improve their country and those around them. It seems as if in today's society there's a little Bobby Kennedy in all of us. While Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy led decidedly different career paths, they shared the distinct similarity of attempting to empower the people to stand up for what was right in a nation infected by wrongs. It is because of people like King and Kennedy that our generation is full of people who are willing to put themselves out there and make a difference. As one can learn from studying the year of 1968, violence and disarray will inevitably be prevalent at times in our country's existence, but how we as a people respond to these difficult times will end up writing the history books.